FBI and police across the country are searching for two missing children from Rexburg, Idaho. They may be in serious danger. 7-year-old Joshua Vallow and 17-year-old Tylee Ryan have been missing since September. Their newlywed parents.
Well, this is a very complex case. We have the death of Tammy, and then we have the two missing children.
I don't know why they're doing what they're doing. It doesn't make any sense.
The weird thing is there was no warning signs saying, hey, there's something going on here. There's nothing.
There was a number of issues that just didn't look right.
I don't know what happened to those kids.
Chad Daybell and Tylee Vallow are newlyweds. Both of them had spouses who suspiciously died within the last few months. Tonight we spoke to a man who used to be part of the family and has some insight on what might be going on.
The disappearance of two Idaho children captured national headlines in late 2019, sparking a multi-state search for answers. But the truth was more sinister than anyone could have imagined. This is the story of how a web of lies, extreme religious beliefs, and cold-blooded murder led to the deaths of JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan at the hands of their own mother, Tylee Daybell. I'm Eagle, and this is True Crime Legacy. Our story begins in the suburbs of Arizona, where Tylee Vallow was living with her fourth husband, Charles, and her two children, 7-year-old JJ and 16-year-old Tylee. By all accounts, Lori was a doting mother and active member of the Mormon Church. She married Charles in 2006, and the family seemed picture-perfect from the outside. But those closest to Lori say her personality suddenly shifted around 2018. She became completely consumed with apocalyptic end-times prophecies. Lori had always been religious, but now she was fixated on the idea that the second coming of Christ was imminent. She started making outlandish claims that she was receiving visions and could communicate with angels and dead relatives. Her loved ones no longer recognized the woman she had become. Lori's third husband, Joseph Ryan, said Lori had always been enthralled by near-death experiences and visions, but this was on another level. Her sister, Summer Shiflett, and friend April Raymond would later testify how Lori's interests grew increasingly sinister. She became obsessed with Chad Daybell.
Help us understand how somebody is just one man and act of faith away from totally changing who they were in the most perverse and wicked way.
You know, I'm not sure that I even completely understand what happened or what was necessarily the catalyst. I think it was a combination of things. I think that Lori was kind of at a crossroads in her life for a lot of reasons. I think she was unhappy in her marriage. She had recently become a grandmother, and she had met Chad Daybell. And I think, you know, and those are just the circumstances that I am privy to. I don't know everything else that had been going on in her life. I think just the combination of all three was extremely toxic and led us to where we are today.
What did you see that let you know, not that, oh, she's going to hurt her kids, but this is no longer who I remember?
Right. So we had not seen each other for quite some time. She had lived in Kauai and she'd moved back to Arizona with Charles. And she initially in 2018, she came for a visit with Tylee. And that's when I started to see the change in her. She was having some different beliefs. That's where she shared with me that she'd had an experience in the temple where she had seen the angel Moroni, in that she was part of the 144,000. And then it was in a separate visit in 2019, again with Tylee in tow, an unannounced visit at that, where she kind of applied the pressure a little bit more, and was really a lot more aggressive with her beliefs and trying to persuade me. And it just wasn't something that made any sense to me. She looked different. She was speaking differently. She was associating with people that she'd never really been associating with before. And it wasn't the same person that I had known.
The person you saw in the courtroom, any trace of the Tylee Vallow you knew?
No, and I had a lot of trepidation going into my testimony, as anticipating what it would feel like to see her and be, 20 feet away from her. And I, when I sat down, I looked over at her with her counsel at their table, and it wasn't the person that I knew. I grieved the loss of my friend quite a while ago, and it was confirmed that day in court, it was a complete stranger I was looking at. It wasn't her.
A local author who claimed to receive communications from beyond the grave. Lori started following Chad's teachings about evil spirits and dimensional portals. Chad ran a small publishing company catering to Latter-day Saints interested in end times theology. With titles like Days of Fury and Evading Babylon, Chad's books told sensational stories of his supposed visions of the apocalypse. He founded a website called LDS preparing a people to share his fringe religious principles and attract a following. Chad preached that there were 3 levels of heavenly kingdoms, and a person's eternal resting place was determined by the level of their soul. He claimed he could discern whether a person's spirit was light or dark. Chad taught that the biblical last days were upon them, so zombies possessed by evil spirits would need to be purged before the second coming. Lori immersed herself in Chad's teachings. She started introducing herself as Lori Maroney, claiming she was married to the angel Maroney in a prior life. Friends like April Raymond were stunned and concerned by Lori's increasingly worrisome behavior. She had always been eccentric, but now she was completely obsessed with Chad's spiritual visions. Charles Vallow also saw these alarming changes unfolding in his wife. According to court documents, Lori had told Charles that she was a translated being sent to lead the 144,000 chosen ones through the apocalypse. She said she could not be killed and threatened Charles with murder if he betrayed her sacred mission. In February 2019, an anxious Charles filed for divorce from Lori in Arizona court. He described her bizarre spiritual claims, like being eternally married to the ancient Book of Mormon prophet Moroni. Charles wanted sole custody of 7-year-old JJ, saying Lori had recently become preoccupied with near-death experiences. He seemed to sense the danger coming. Tragically, Charles's worst fears were realized. In July 2019, Lori's brother Alex Cox shot and killed Charles during an altercation at Lori's home in Chandler, Arizona.
Where's the bedroom?
Yes.
Okay, so you hear the argument, you step out, what's the first thing that you see?
Charles chasing after Lori kneeling.
Okay. Had Tylee already gotten the bat? No. Did he already have the bat? Okay.
No.
So Charles is coming towards Lori.
He's coming towards Lori, and I shoved him back.
Okay.
And I said, "What are you doing?" Because he's coming at her aggressively.
Okay.
He's a big dude, so he's not gonna hurt my sister.
Okay. So he's coming at her.
Yeah.
And you shoved him back.
Yeah.
What happened right after that? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
He got back up and he comes right to me, doesn't look at me, and continues to yell at Lori.
Okay.
So he's maybe this far away.
Are you in the hallway of the house, or
we're right close to the doorway of that bedroom.
Of the bedroom you were staying?
Yes.
Okay. So you're right near the bedroom?
Yes.
Okay.
So then, I don't remember why, he backed up, and then my sister came around behind me, and they ended up in the living room, and then while they're on the way to the living room, Tylee comes out of her bedroom, which is adjacent to the one I was staying in.
Okay.
With her bat.
Okay.
Yelling at Charles. Actually, she was behind Charles at first, and then she cut around in front of him in the living room.
Okay. So he then went back, they went back towards the living room? Okay. So at some point in time, Charles backs up. Lori comes out, and they both go around you and towards the living room?
Yes.
Tylee comes out of her room with a bat?
Yeah.
And basically, they've made their way into the living room?
Yes.
So Tylee pokes her dad in the back?
In the front, in the
In
chest.
The front. Okay, so she's
yeah.
come around this way?
Yeah.
Okay, so she's come around.
So this is Tylee, and that's Charles.
Okay, so she pokes him in the bat, or in the chest with the bat.
Yeah.
You know how many times about, or
just once, and then he grabbed the bat.
So he grabs the bat and takes it away. You come towards him.
Yeah.
And then what happened right after that?
He shoved me and spun me around.
Okay.
And then cracked me in the back of the head.
Cracked you in the back of the head. He hit you one time?
Yeah.
Okay. So you go back to your room.
I stumbled forward, and then I went back in there.
Did you fall to the ground when you got hit with the bat?
No, my head bounced.
Okay. So you go back to your room.
Yeah.
Get the gun.
Yeah.
Come back to the living room.
Yeah.
Now, Tylee and Lori are gone.
Yeah.
And
it's just me and Charles in the living room.
Okay. And Charles, what's he doing again?
He's got the bat.
Okay.
And he's looking at me, and he's going, what? And I told him, I said, Charles, put that bat down. And he goes, what are you going to do about it?
How are you holding the gun when that happened?
Okay,
so you're pointing it at him? You tell him, Charles, put the gun down,
Yeah,
or put the bat down.
Mm-hmm.
And what did he say?
He's like, what are you gonna do about it?
Okay,
And then comes at me.
okay. And then you fire a couple times.
Yeah.
But you're not sure how many. You know it was more than one.
I'm pretty sure it was 2.
2? Okay, 2 shots. Where were you aiming on his body?
Just center.
Okay, so you're pretty sure 2 shots center mass.
Yeah.
He falls to the ground. You don't see Lori or Tylee anymore.
Correct.
You go to the kitchen, grab a rag for your head,
Yeah, toss some paper towels and wash my hands off.
and then go back to your room, put the gun down,
Yeah.
grab your phone,
Yeah.
come back to the kitchen and call in.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they walked me through and tried to do CPR.
Okay.
Cox claimed self-defense, but many family members suspected Lori was behind the attack on her ex-husband. Charles had desperately tried to get help, only to be slain before anyone could intervene. Now, with Charles out of the picture, Lori's path of destruction quickly escalated. She drained JJ's $4,000 a month trust fund and fled to Rexburg, Idaho with her 2 kids. Lori's niece, Melanie Pulowski, later told the FBI how Lori's paranoia increased exponentially during this time. She ranted about how people were after her and asked Melanie to lie to police on her behalf. In Rexburg, Lori reconnected with Chad Daybell. The two had met previously at an LDS preppers conference where Chad was speaking. Now they started exchanging emails about their shared spiritual interests. Chad encouraged Lori's bizarre beliefs that she was immortal, assigned to usher in the last days. Soon, their relationship turned romantic. Chad's wife, Tylee Daybell, noticed her husband growing more distant. In a Facebook message to a friend, Tammy confessed she felt betrayed by Chad's emotional affair with Lori. Just 2 weeks after Tammy's death in October 2019, Chad and Lori married in a quickie ceremony in Kauai. Around this time, JJ's grandparents, Larry and Kay Woodcock, grew worried they hadn't heard from the boy. In late November 2019, they requested police do a welfare check at Lori's home in Rexburg, but JJ and Tylee were nowhere to be found. Lori claimed JJ was visiting relatives in Arizona, which police quickly discovered was a lie. Lori maintained the kids were safe and she had done nothing wrong. She and Chad fled to Hawaii as police ramped up the search. Investigators realized something was very suspicious about Tylee Daybell's sudden death. They also started dismantling Lori and Chad's web of deception and secrecy. Police uncovered evidence that Lori had been lying about her children's whereabouts for months. She told witnesses Tylee was attending classes at BYU, Idaho, but there was no record of her enrollment. When officers searched Lori's home, the children's belongings were still there, including JJ's service dog. Darker discoveries put Lori's motives under the microscope. Police obtained emails between Lori and Chad where she asked him to assess her children's spirits. Chad deemed Tylee a 4.1 dark spirit who had turned against the light in previous lives. This suggested Lori saw her daughter as one of the zombies who Chad said must be purged. One of Lori's friends, Melanie Gibbs, told police about Lori's chilling claims that Tylee had become a zombie, so she had no choice but to kill her. Lori allegedly said JJ had outlived his usefulness, so she and Chad had buried him in Chad's pet cemetery. But police could find no trace of the children's remains there. In June 2020, investigators finally found the missing pieces to the puzzle.
This morning, a potentially devastating end to the search for Idaho siblings Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow. Family members telling ABC News that 2 sets of human remains were found on Chad Daybell's property Tuesday, belong to his wife Lori Vallow's missing children. The family saying in a statement, "We are filled with unfathomable sadness that these 2 bright stars were stolen from us, and only hope that they died without pain or suffering." Police have not yet publicly confirmed the identities of the remains.
Bail is to assure that he's not a flight risk.
Mr. Daybell, do you understand the allegations on both counts that have been brought against you?
I do.
Daybell has been charged with 2 counts of destruction, alteration, or concealment of evidence, the judge setting his bail at $1 million after prosecutors argued the manner in which one of the bodies was concealed was, quote, particularly egregious.
They uncovered 2 dismembered bodies buried in Chad's backyard, Tylee and JJ. Autopsies determined both children had been murdered months earlier. Still, Lori and Chad pled not guilty to all charges against them. The trial in 2023 painted a disturbing portrait of two fanatics whose doomsday religion led them to unspeakable acts. Prosecutors built a methodical case that religious delusions were the central motive behind the cruel murders of Charles, JJ, Tylee, and Tammy. The state's argument was simple. Lori and Chad's obsession with end times visions made them view their family as possessed agents of Satan. In their minds, killing the zombies was completely justified, even righteous. Prosecutors pointed to the email where Chad labeled Tylee an evil spirit as proof the couple saw the teen as beyond saving. Jurors heard excruciating evidence about the condition of the children's bodies. JJ had been bound with duct tape and suffocated in plastic bags. Tylee's body was so damaged and burned, investigators could not determine how she was killed. Experts theorized Lori's brother Alex Cox was enlisted to carry out the actual murder of the kids. Perhaps most shocking was the revelation that JJ's grandparents were just minutes away from potentially rescuing him on the day he likely died. Cell phone data showed Alex Cox was at Chad's property, while the Woodcocks tried to visit JJ next door. Instead, Cox texted that JJ was asleep, forever silencing the child. The prosecution argued Chad and Lori carefully planned the murders to collect insurance money from Tammy and Charles's deaths. Tammy's body was exhumed and found to contain deadly levels of medication.
Saying that's what this case is all about. They painted the picture that defendant Tylee Daybell conspired with her latest husband Chad Daybell and brother Alex Cox to kill her own kids and Chad's first wife Tammy Daybell. We learned in court today that Tammy died by asphyxiation just a few weeks before Chad married Lori at the end of 2019.
Prosecutors laid out a timeline showing Lori and Chad married immediately after eliminating spouses they saw as obstacles.
The mystery surrounding the kids' disappearance started long before Lori and Chad were found in Hawaii. Lori married Chad in Hawaii on November 5th. He's her fifth husband. But before that, she was married to Charles Vallow, and they lived in Arizona. In January of 2019, body camera footage from Arizona police shows Charles pleading to officers for Lori to get help and claiming she was trying to kill him.
Murder today or tomorrow?
But officers determined she was fine. About 5 months later, on July 11th, Lori's brother Alex Cox shot and killed Charles in what Alex claimed was self-defense. Body camera footage shows police responding to the home.
And is he hurt or is he alive? Yeah, there's blood. He's not moving.
Lori showed up a short time later.
How long have you lived here?
Like 3 weeks.
Oh, geez. Yeah, okay.
That's why the neighbors don't know us.
Gotcha.
Like, hi neighbor, sorry.
The very next month, Lori, Tylee, JJ, Alex, and Lori's niece Melanie moved to Rexburg.
September 8th, 2019, the last time 17-year-old Tylee Ryan is seen. She was on a trip to Yellowstone with her mother, Tylee Vallow, and uncle, Alex Cox. A cellular analysis survey team, or CAST, with the FBI analyzed data from Alex's phone. According to the probable cause affidavit, the GPS data points used by CAST are highly accurate, placing a device within 6 meters of its location. On September 9th, one day after the Yellowstone trip, that GPS data puts Alex's phone at Lori's Rexburg apartment between 2:42 a.m. and 3:37 a.m. This is the only time he was at Lori's between midnight and 6 a.m., according to the PCA. A few hours later, 9:21 a.m. until a little after 11 a.m., Alex's phone pings at Chad Daybell's property, specifically placing him behind the home near the barn. Just 14 minutes after Alex leaves, Chad sends a text to his then-wife, Tammy Daybell. The text reads, quote, "I've had an interesting morning. I felt I should burn all the limb debris by the fire pit before it got too soaked by the coming storms. While I did so, I spotted a big raccoon along the fence. I hurried and got my gun, and he was still walking along. I got close enough, one shot did the trick. He's now in our pet cemetery. Fun times." Police state this was suspicious because raccoons are nocturnal. Neighbors of Chad's also reported to police frequent bonfires at Chad's house, which was out of the norm. Fast forward a few weeks to September 22nd, the last time JJ Vallow was seen. Police interviewed Melanie Gibb and her boyfriend David Warwick, who were visiting Lori that weekend. They told police Lori said JJ had turned into a zombie. The next morning, September 23rd, between 8 and 9 a.m., Warwick didn't see JJ and asked where he was. Lori stated he was acting out, so, quote, Alex had come and taken JJ. GPS data once again puts Alex on Chad's property that day from 9:55 a.m. until 10:12 a.m., pinging near the pond.
At the time, Chad was married to Tammy, and they also lived in Rexburg. By this point, Chad and Lori were believed to have some type of relationship. Court documents show they met in 2018 at a religious conference in Utah. Then, on October 19th of 2019, Tammy Daybell died in her sleep. Court records show 10 days before her death, Tammy called 911 and reported a masked man shot at her in her driveway. Court documents later indicate Lori's brother tried to shoot and kill Tammy. Initially, a coroner ruled Tammy died of natural causes, but investigators later reopened the case and exhumed her body on December 11th. 1 day later, Lori's brother Alex died suddenly of natural causes. 2 weeks later, Lori and Chad got married in Hawaii. Then 4 months later, in February of 2021.
Scott County Sheriff's Office has received the autopsy report on Tammy Daybell's body from the Utah Medical Examiner, but they are not releasing it to the public just yet.
That report has still not been released, but Lori and Chad are charged in connection with conspiring to kill Tammy. On November 26th, 1 month after Tammy's death, Kay and Larry Woodcock, JJ's grandparents, ordered a welfare check for JJ. Police say Lori told them JJ was with her friend Melanie Gibb in Arizona. Melanie told East Idaho News Chad called her that day and said when police call, don't pick up the phone.
He says, yeah, the police are over at Lori's house checking on JJ. And I'm like, JJ's not with Kay? No. My heart dropped deeper.
Rexburg police returned to Lori's home the next day, this time with a search warrant. But Lori was gone. That's when Chad and Lori, newly married, are found in Hawaii. Police in Hawaii served a court order saying Lori had 5 days to physically produce the kids. The newlyweds ignored that deadline.
She's got an end game in her head, and although this is not a game, but obviously she thinks it is, for you to shun an order from a court telling you what you need to do.
Police arrested Lori in Hawaii on February 20th, 2020. She was charged with child desertion, obstructing an officer, contempt of court, and solicitation to commit a crime.
Do you know that you have been charged in the state of Idaho with a number of charges?
At this point, both her kids are still missing. Lori was extradited from Hawaii to Idaho on March 5th. KTVB was the only media outlet to get video of Lori landing at the Boise airport. From there, she was flown to Rexburg.
Welcome back, Lori. Where are your kids? Tell us where your kids are.
KTVB was there as she made her first court appearance in Idaho on March 6th.
All rise.
Her son, Colby Ryan, was also there, along with Kay and Larry Woodcock.
Where are Tylee and JJ?
Where are the kids? Where are the kids?
Fast forward to June of 2020, 9 months after JJ and Tylee disappeared. Investigators searched Chad Daybell's Idaho property and found human remains. That's when police arrested him.
The investigators and detectives have recovered what's believed to be human remains that are not identified at this time.
Rexburg police later confirmed the remains belonged to JJ and Tylee.
I just want you to know I came here for one thing. That's the C word.
Then in May of 2021,
a Fremont County grand jury indicted the couple on 2 charges of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. And another first in this case, with Daybell charged with first-degree murder of his late wife, Tammy Daybell.
To drive home Lori's state of mind, prosecutors used her own words against her. Jurors heard clips of Lori's podcast interview where she spoke of people turning into zombies. They also heard recordings of her rattling on about spiritual visions to her friend Melanie Gibbs. These recordings established that Lori fervently believed in Chad's teachings. The defense tried to counter by arguing Lori was severely mentally ill. Her attorney said she was manipulated into adopting Chad's bizarre beliefs when she was in a vulnerable state. They claimed Charles's shooting by Alex Cox, who had a history of violence, sent her into a downward spiral of paranoia. But the jury did not buy Lori was merely a pawn controlled by others. After all, she was the one who expressionlessly lied to police about her missing children's whereabouts time and again. For nearly a year, not a shred of guilt or remorse crossed Lori's face while her children's bodies were secretly buried. Her act may have convinced her followers, but the jury saw right through it. In May 2022, after just 2 hours of deliberation, Lori Vallow Daybell was found guilty on all counts: 2 charges of first-degree murder for killing her children, and 1 charge of conspiracy to murder Chad's wife, Tammy.
A jury in Idaho has found a mother guilty of killing her own children and her husband's first wife. As Chris Van Cleve reports, witnesses testified the so-called doomsday mom believed her kids were possessed by evil spirits.
Guilty. It took less than 7 hours for the jury to find Lori Vallow Daybell guilty on all charges, including first-degree murder of her 2 youngest children and conspiracy in the death of her husband Chad's then-wife Tammy.
My heart hurts for these 3.
Family members were emotional after the verdict.
JJ, Papa misses you. I miss you.
The verdict marked the culmination of an investigation that had captivated and horrified the nation. At her sentencing hearing in June, Lori continued trying to beatify her image against all evidence to the contrary. Her strange jailhouse statements about communicating with angels and zombies revealed she was still deeply enveloped in Chad's teachings. The judge was unmoved, sentencing Lori to life behind bars without chance of parole. So in the end, how did a seemingly normal mother turn into a callous murderer of children? The full tragic tale reveals she was on a dark path long before meeting Chad Daybell. Looking back, many noticed oddities in Lori even during her early adulthood. Despite having no formal jobs, she always seemed to live lavishly. Former friend April Raymond recalled Lori's manipulation tactics, like dramatizing minor illnesses to gain sympathy. She horizontalized relationships, turning people against each other. April often caught Lori in small lies designed to twist truths and deceive. After Lori's 3rd divorce from Joseph Ryan, things took a troubling turn. Joseph actually feared Lori would kill him and avoided being alone with her. He secretly recorded her making threats against his life. His concerns proved well-founded when Lori targeted him next, after Charles. Charles Vallow sought help from Lori's family, but they failed to intervene before it was too late. He accurately identified how Lori's religious delusions had turned downright dangerous. But sadly, Charles was portrayed as the problem rather than Lori. Her brother Alex enabled her darkest tendencies when he shot Charles at her home. With each successive husband, Lori appears to have devolved further into her cold, cunning, and cruel persona. Friends noticed how she constantly projected blame outward, justifying even her most appalling behavior. She driven by a frightening mix of greed, bloodlust, and desire for control. Lori's 5th and final husband, Chad Daybell, encouraged these sinister traits to fully blossom. Chad preyed on vulnerable people interested in his unorthodox teachings. Lori made the perfect recruit, as she had long gravitated toward the magical thinking and grandeur that Chad promised. In Chad's world, Lori could view herself as all-powerful. Ultimately, the married couple's shared apocalyptic delusions created an echo chamber that drowned out reality. In their minds, they were the righteous chosen ones ordained to judge humanity as evil or good. Lori's children and Chad's wife posed threats that had to be neutralized. This case illustrates the immense danger when 2 people reinforce each other's deepest paranoid fantasies. Lori and Chad's beliefs fostered an us versus them environment where compassion disappears. Killing was not only justified, it was necessary to serve their so-called higher purpose. The tragic murders of JJ, Tylee, Charles, and Tammy Daybell represent the costs when extremes go unchecked. Those closest to Lori Vallow saw red flags long before she turned violent. This case highlights the need for intervention when religious beliefs turn toward harm. Perhaps if Lori's family had forced psychiatric intervention back in 2018, 4 innocent lives could have been spared. But the true crime legacy of this case remains one of preventable loss. Charles Vallow was the lone voice of reason crying for help, only to be silenced by the system that should have protected him. In the end, JJ and Tylee were victims not only of their mother's cruelty, but of the society that dismissed the threat until it was too late. The little boy who loved dinosaurs and his devoted big sister will be remembered for the joy they brought to so many. Their lives enrich our world more than their deaths could ever diminish it. For those who loved them, the light of JJ and Tylee will shine on eternally.